Have you ever signed up for a journey, made a commitment, without really knowing what exactly was going to happen? I did that several years ago when my dear friend, and probably one of the most influential women in my life, came to me one day and asked me a question. Now, she had been, several years had been ill and lung disease and was losing her capacity. And for like a year, she drove around town in a little jitney with the flag on the top with her oxygen tanks with her. And as the year went on, you would see her out less and less. And the next spring came, and she wasn't out at all because her lungs were getting worse and worse, and she was requiring more oxygen. She invited me over one day, and she had just recently been told that the disease was terminal, and there wasn't a lot of choices she had. The only choice was a lung transplant at this point. Now, lung transplants are not easy. You just don't go in and say, oh, I want an organ transplant. Put me on the list and let's see what happens. There's a lot of testing. There's a lot of seeing who's qualified, seeing if you fit the criteria, making sure you have the family support, making sure that you will be able to take care of yourself afterwards, making sure that you're mentally ready and capable of going through the process. Well, that evening she invited me over for cheese and wine and some strawberries, and we were sitting. And she said, Mina, she said, I need to ask you a question. She said, I don't have anybody that can be with me to, one, get me to Philadelphia to the hospital. If the call comes, you have between an hour and an hour and a half to get to the hospital because the lungs don't last that long, and you have to get there immediately to be prepped for the surgery. And she said, two, I don't have anybody to stay with me afterwards. I don't have family in the area, and I will need someone to commit to live with me after the transplant and to take care of me, make sure that I eat properly, make sure that I'm taking my medicine, making sure that I'm staying hydrated, and just be there for me on a regular basis when I come home. She said, it won't be that much. I'll be fine. I'll be able to take care of myself, but they just need to know someone's going to be there. And of course I said yes. There's no way I would have denied her the chance to help her to have that moment of survival and to live the way that she wanted to continue her life. Well, this was pre-COVID, and transplants were easier to get pre-COVID because unfortunately people were out driving and there were a lot more car accidents pre-COVID. During COVID, people weren't on the roads. There weren't as many accidents. There weren't as many potential opportunities for someone to donate an organ. So she was a very, very tiny woman, and so she would need very special organs, very special qualifications to get an organ. So we had went out to the hospital and we'd gone through all the testing, and they made sure that I really knew what I was getting into. But as we were waiting and waiting for that phone call to come, it didn't come. And finally it reached the stage where the hospital suggested that she go to Philadelphia, and she stayed there in case a transplant came in, because they were concerned she wouldn't be able to get there in time. She was there for 3 months and then 6 months. And remember, this was COVID. There was no one that could go in and visit her. You know, the hospitals were closed down. She eventually ended up in a nursing care facility. People couldn't go and visit her. So her friends would send chocolate in the mail. She was definitely a chocoholic. And she needed the calories to keep her strength up. But one day she called me and she said, Mina, she said, they've taken me off the list and they want me to stay here until the end. And she said, I can't stay here. She said, I want to come home. Will you take care of me when I come home? And I, of course, said yes. They brought her home, just a little tiny thing, and we spent time together talking and up with her, holding her hand in the middle of the night when she was afraid and making sure she had the oxygen she needed. And it was getting worse and worse trying to keep the oxygen, and we were running out of tanks. And finally, one night, I knew I couldn't take care of her any longer, and I called the ambulance to come get her, and she passed away 2 days later. But that was a ride I would never have chosen to take, but it's something I was glad I was able to do for my dear friend.